special meeting of the Southbury Board of Selectmen. Can you scroll down on that? January 14th to 2021 to order at 6:02. Can I have the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
To the
United
flag
States of America,
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation,
indivisible,
under God,
with liberty
indivisible,
and
liberty
justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Scroll up. Thank you. Speak closer to the microphone. Okay. Up is a discussion and possible action on the passing of a resolution by the Southbury Board of Selectmen as proposed at the Thursday, January 7th, 2021 monthly meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution with a change of on January 6th of 2021. Do I have such a motion?
I make the motion.
Jason Bucksbaum makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mike Rosen.
Okay, made and seconded. It's open for discussion. Who would like to be first? Hearing none. Okay. Emily Harrison.
In reviewing this statement, I know we've gone back and forth on this a few times. And is it possible that we can pull up this resolution that we're reviewing, since we've gone through a few versions? I'd like to be sure.
This is the only one I have.
Sure. Thanks, Betsy. I think the first thing that's important to sit here and say is that within the board, and I'm confident in this, no one here is arguing whether what happened at the Capitol is wrong. The death of anyone is wrong. Destruction of property is wrong. Any riot is wrong. But I have to sit here and say that I'm reviewing this and sitting on it. The four of us in this room tonight made a promise, it's in our campaign literature right here, to not dive into partisan politics, to not talk about national politics, because what we were elected to do is to focus on the business of Southbury. And that is really important to me, and we look at this. However, in this statement, if we're going to talk about something that has happened within violence on a national level, I think it is critical that we encompass all violence that we have seen over the last 8 months. Otherwise, Jason made it very clear that he wants this to stay apolitical, but this doesn't do that. Then we don't serve that purpose, and we're, I think, doing a disservice to ourselves by not encompassing everything that we have seen happen over the last year. All of the riots, all of the violence. But more importantly, and I'll get back to this, the biggest thing that I have a problem with in this statement is that it takes away from the business of Southbury. We were elected to be a part of the business of this town, this day-to-day operations and any ongoing future impacts and the long-term success of this community. This does not impact Southbury. This doesn't impact the business of Southbury. Let me be clear on that. When we want to talk about what's going on with River Road, how is this statement important to that? How is this statement important to the budget? How is it important for senior services? That's where I look at this and say, I can't vote for this because it doesn't have to do with the business of Southbury.
Okay. George Bertram.
I'm going to take my mask off to read this, otherwise I'm going to muffle everything. I have a written statement. I'll read it, but paraphrase on occasion. Firstly, I strongly condemn the riots that occurred on January 6th at our nation's Capitol building. I hope that those who perpetrated these crimes are prosecuted to the law's full extent and then some. Furthermore, I condemn all riots and violence perpetrated for political gain. Secondly, I suggest that this board refrain from issuing statements related to national issues. As a board, we should focus our time and energy on town business. I'm not keen on setting a precedent on this particular issue when so many come up from time to time at the national level that seem to deserve attention. It is not productive, beneficial, or prudent to spend our time on national issues over which this board has no control and do not directly impact our town's operation. By engaging in issues outside of our control, we dilute our energies and our time. That takes away from doing the town's business, which is our only charge as a board. We certainly have enough on our plates without getting distracted by national issues. As an example, I've spent way too much time on this particular question over the past week, and I could have certainly spent that time on other things that would have been more directly beneficial to the town. We need to focus on the essential issues that impact Southbury's day-to-day operations and long-term future, and we have plenty to do in that regard. On the other hand, each selectman is free to make statements as they see fit, when they see fit, on whatever issues they wish to pine in on. If we want to issue a resolution, let's start by condemning all politically motivated violence, not just what happened at the Capitol. It's incredible to me how many people suddenly discovered on January 6th that riots are a terrible thing. Have you not noticed that riots went on for weeks and even months in many cities across the United States? Princeton University did a study of the protests over the summer. They studied 3 months of protest and identified 570 violent demonstrations in 220 locations. In these riots, it's reported that up to 2,000 police officers were injured. I've seen that written in several articles, but I can't verify that number for certain. We do know, however, that 50 Secret Service agents were injured in D.C. during one night of rioting alone. Police vehicles were routinely torched. Rioters thought nothing of tossing bricks, rocks, Molotov cocktails at police and innocents. Thousands of businesses were looted, burned, and destroyed, wreaking financial and emotional devastation on their owners. The organizers of these riots often encouraged the looting. A group called the Property Claims Services, which is related to the insurance industry, found that the riots between May 26th and June 8th will cost $2 billion at least, just in the insurance claims, and a lot of the damage is probably not insured. This makes them the most costly riots in our nation's history. Plus, the riots continued after that date. It may take decades to recover and rebuild some of these ravaged communities, yet we as a board remain silent the whole time. I find that level of hypocrisy that I just can't swallow, frankly. I am thankful that our town has been spared from the violence and savagery witnessed over the last 8 months. In conclusion, as a board, I suggest that we refrain from issuing a resolution specifically on the Capitol riots. However, if you feel a resolution is necessary, I can go along with condemning all political violence. In the future, I also strongly suggest that we avoid getting into national issues. Let's focus on our town. That's what the voters elected us to do. Thank you.
George, I think you far more eloquently and in depth have expressed my
Thank
thoughts
you,
as
George.
well.
Excuse me, Emily. Thank you, George. Is there anybody, Justin and Mike, you're out there, Mike or Justin?
Yeah, it's Mike. I'm more than glad to say something. I don't have anything prepared. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised by the opinions, which they have a right to, of Selectman Bertram and Selectman Harrison. I was disappointed that despite the fact that out of courtesy we agreed we'd give a little bit of time to review a statement, that it took this long for us to get together. I want to thank First Selectman Manville and Selectman Bucksbaum for taking the lead on drafting the statement last week. I thought it was very well written, and most importantly, it was written in an apolitical manner. The simple fact is that what happened last Wednesday at Congress was not political violence. All right? Political violence makes an assumption that there is some type of political affiliation involved. This was an attack on our government, no different than a foreign entity attacking our government. We wouldn't call that a political attack. We would call that an attack. It was an attack on democracy, right in the heart of our democracy, our Congress. So I'm disappointed to hear that point of view and the attempt to try to politicize what's not a political issue. This should be apolitical. This statement should not only be apolitical, but because of the makeup of our group, I'd hope would be bipartisan in support of issuing a statement. This does have to do with Southbury, because if you are willing to accept and ignore an attack on democracy, we're part of a government democracy as well. Right here in Southbury, our responsibility is to get more people engaged in our local community, engaged in democracy. And what happened last week was an explicit and purposeful attack on our very special American form of representative democracy. And as representatives of the people of Southbury, this to me was an easy decision. The fact is that Selectman Bertram quoted the Princeton study. Harvard did a study that said, and I talked about this last week, and I said that I believe that it would be embarrassing to try to make a false equivalency to the protests that happened this summer. The reason I said that was that those were being done not as an attack on democracy, right? Violence is bad. It has been denounced along the way. That wasn't an attack, though. That's trying to turn this into something political. Only 3.7% of the protests that happened this summer involved property damage or vandalism. That's according to Harvard's study. That's over 8,700 protests that they looked at based on police data. That suggests that 96.3% of those events involved no property damage or police injuries, and in 97.7% of those events, no injuries were reported amongst participants, by bystanders, or by police, and there was no destruction of property. But still, it's making a false argument. We have to stop trying to do that. It happened yesterday in Congress. That's why there was bipartisan support for what happened yesterday in Congress. This is apolitical. It's a no-brainer. We should issue this statement. I thank Jason and Jeff for taking the lead on drafting such an apolitical statement, and I am prepared to vote yes on this and wish we had done it last Thursday because I was prepared to do so then.
Justin, you have any comments on this?
Well, I think I would echo Mike's thanks to Jason and you for putting the statement together that was presented last Thursday. I don't know if there's any different draft on the table now, and I understand people wanting, if we're going to make a statement, having it encompassing a lot of different things. But in this case, I think we have to laser focus on what happened on the 6th. It's obviously still being investigated. I think we should just also recognize there's going to be times that the 6 of us just don't agree on everything. And, I'm ready to vote to move this motion. And, I would agree with George and Emily that we shouldn't spend a lot of time on things like this. And that's why we should just go ahead and move forward with the statement as is.
Okay. Jason, do you have any?
Yeah, so I don't have anything prepared for tonight. I would encourage people to watch our meeting of January 7th. This statement was on the agenda, and it was fully debated, and I expressed my sentiments at that time. What I will say, just responding to some of the things I heard earlier from my colleagues, is, as you know, Emily, over the last couple of days, I have indicated to you that I respect your position and your opinion that we should not be making this statement. That certainly entitled to that. I just respectfully disagree in this instance. And I just take issue to really one thing that you guys said, as you know, because we've had emails on this. And that is that this is not a political statement. There are a lot of ways you could make this a political statement. And I was very, very careful not to do that. This does say that violent protests and attacks on our government have no place in democracy. This does say that we condemn the use of violent protests for any purpose. And I have condemned the violence that has occurred over the past year. But there are certain things that happen. Doesn't come along too often, but there are certain things that happen, certain issues that arise that in my view transcend politics. and this is it. If there's not, if we can't get behind the fact that condemning an attack on our government is not a political statement, you know, I just don't believe that it is. It's not expressing a political point of view. It's not taking sides on the issue. It's not doing anything like that. You know, this is, you know, as I said last Thursday, this was an attack on our Congress, the sacred temple of our democracy, one of the most important institutions we have. And in my view, and you know, reasonable minds can differ and disagree, it was an attack on elected officials everywhere. We are elected officials, and we have a right to come here and do our job without fear of physical violence. And I think it's important for elected officials to lead by example and to send a message that physical violence against our government is not appropriate, is not right. It's not the right way to do things. The right way to do it is peaceful assembly, peaceful protest. People can, you know, criticize, disagree, but a physical attack on our government, to me, was above all other sorts of issues, was above politics, and it's why, in this instance, I was moved to do this. This does not violate any campaign promises. This does not open any precedents, because I have never advocated for our board to engage in political statements. I'm not doing so now, and I certainly will resist any efforts to do so in the future. Thank you.
I think the difference is, and
Excuse
I'll
me.
agree.
So for me, what I looked at this on January 6th was a concern, again, on a personal level, though we could say it doesn't, is not affecting us or Southbury. As this attack on our government, we also have our state government and also the security of our own municipal government. And does, you know, the fact that I feel that we should have the ability to walk in our society and meet our constituents and walk our halls here in town hall with citizens coming in and saying hello to them and not being afraid. This puts government back away from the accessibility that the people should have from them, which is a concern of mine. For the record, I reached out and asked Jason Buxbaum, Selectman Buxbaum, to write a statement that was not political and was in not attacking any political thing, but just a statement against protest, violent protest in general, and this attack on our government. So, just for the record, I reached out to Selectman Buxbaum to do that. Emily, did you want to make something else?
I would. As far as the nature of this statement being political or not, between the rest of us, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree here. The mere timing of the statement, however, makes this political. We've witnessed violence, far more violence, and I'm not saying any level is good. And Mike, you make that point, 97% don't involve property damage or injury. 99% would be too much. Any amount of violence, any amount of rioting is unacceptable. I'm glad we can all at least agree on that level, but the mere timing of the statement coming out condemning violence after the Capitol and not having done so throughout the rest of last year as a board makes this political. The fact that we're not directly calling out the violence that we saw last year makes this political. I've had numerous people in this town reach out to me and say that they don't feel like we should be involved in making a statement like this because it doesn't have to do with the direct business of this town. And I have to agree with them. I share that same sentiment. And my fear with this is we're setting a precedent. There have been attacks on the Capitol in the past. We have not seen the board from 1983 to other instances make a statement on that. I don't believe we should be setting that precedent now. If we're talking about national issues, it opens the door to any number of items of importance. Jason, Jeff, you felt like it was important to make this statement now. What's to say in 2 weeks that we don't feel like there's something else that's just as equally important, and then make another statement? What if it's about immigration, global warming? It could be any number of issues. It's not the time to start to set that precedent if it doesn't have to do with the day-to-day impact of the running of our town, of this community. As far as the statement saying this is an attack on our democracy, we've witnessed other attacks on our democracy over the past years and a year. And again, we have not made a statement as a board. I can't stress enough, and I really wish you guys will consider that we shouldn't be setting this precedent. We need to stay focused on the business of our town. We're taking away from it by doing this. There's a number of issues that I can continue to list off and think about financially how the town is doing. As a board, we haven't had strategic planning come in the last year and give the presentations that we told them that they could. Just see that our time is far more valuably used in issues and matters that directly pertain to Southbury. And I wish you guys will truly take that to heart and think about it as you consider making this statement and going to a vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Steve.
Selectman
Ju-
Buxbaum.
ju- Just a couple of things. First, this board is more than capable of spending some time on this and doing all of the work we need to do. I'm not aware of any work that we have not gotten to or not done as a result of preparing a statement to be passed last Thursday. That's just not, that's not the case. And for purposes of some, I guess, legislative history and precedential value, I just want to be clear. This is not a statement about a political issue. Immigration, global warming, people want to come here and make statements about those things, I will oppose them vehemently. This is a statement about an attack on our capital, and we will agree to disagree, but that is different than a statement on a political issue. This is not a political issue. An attack on our government is never political. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've heard from everybody, so I will call the vote. All in favor of I will read the resolution first because the only thing we're changing is, what needs to be changed is the date. Resolution of the Southbury Board of Selectmen. We are disheartened by the events that took place on January 6, 2021 in Washington, D.C. Violent protests and attacks on our government have no place in our democracy. As elected leaders of our community, we condemn the use of violent protest for any purpose, especially the attempted coercion of governmental and constitutional functions, which we hold dear as Americans. While we encourage and welcome peaceful assembly and protest as a means of influencing governmental action, we condemn in the strongest possible terms the actions that took place on January 6, 2021 at the state capitol. I'll call the vote. All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
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 Mike Rosen.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I will be abstaining from this vote as it doesn't have to do with the direct impact of the day-to-day operations of the town, which I was elected to do.
I will also abstain.
For what purpose? For what reason?
I'll reiterate what Emily has just said. I don't believe that this has an impact on the town. We were elected to run the town, not tone in on national issues. I totally disagree that this is
Okay.
a
Point of order.
political, but,
Okay.
you asked
George.
my reasons, and I'm telling you my reasons, Jeff, and I'm done.
Okay. And the motion passes?
Point of order. Point of order.
Mike, what's the point of order?
I do not believe, and I know council's not here, that that if that's the point of view, I don't believe that it's a reasonable point of view for an abstention. If that is their point of view, they should vote no.
Well, I'm not sure what that is, but we have 4 votes in the affirmative. So the motion,
Yeah, and I'm all for that.
it passes. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And it carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Have a great night.
Take care.